Hey everyone, thanks for coming. My name is Blair Beckwith. I've been working with third-party developers at Shopify for about 4 years now. I now lead the developer relations team. So me and my team work with any third party that is developing apps for the Shopify App Store and doing anything they need.
My name is Todd. I work as the merchant experience lead on the apps team. I've been on the team for about a year. But joining you guys a little later on with a couple of great tips on how to improve your merchant experience with your app.
Sweet, thanks Todd. So before we get into how to succeed in the Shopify App Store, I wanted to take a quick minute to frame the opportunity. Now, Shopify obviously is growing incredibly fast. The App Store is growing faster, which is actually even better for you guys. In this graph, the bottom line represents the number of shops over time since 2011, and the top blue line is the number of app installs. So what this means for you guys is that each customer that we bring in, which we're doing very fast, is actually more valuable for you guys. Back in 2011, you were looking at every shop having about 2 apps installed, a little bit under. Now in 2016, that number is quickly approaching 5. So this is really good for you guys. It means merchants are loving the apps that you guys are building, loving using it, loving discovering them, which is absolutely awesome. It means each merchant is worth even more now than they were back then. The App Store is home to a ton of successful partners. These partners cover the full spread from independent designers and developers to agencies, startups who are looking to use the App Store as a platform for distribution for their small business SaaS product. There's store owners who are scratching their own itch with an app, and there's new developers who are learning how to code by building a Shopify app for the first project. There's a ton of unique stories, and we'll get into some of them, but I did want to mention Bold Apps is a great company that you've heard of a lot here, so I won't go too deep into their story, but I did want to say quickly that when I come up here next year to give a similar talk to this, I want to have a new story to tell that started right here. Now, what does success look like? Not everybody wants to be a Bold Apps. There's people who have one app, they want to stay one person. They want to work on it on their own time. They want to keep customer numbers small. Success comes in so many forms. And we're here to help you discover what that looks like for you and what you need to do to get there. So whether you are brand new, you're looking at the Shopify API for the first time, you're building your first app, or you've launched your app, listen up, we'll have some time for some questions at the end. And let's just get into it. One of the first questions that we get is how to come up with an idea for your first app. Now this is hard. Being a store owner is actually incredibly helpful here. Now not everybody owns a store. You should start one. It's actually kind of fun. We all do it internally. But a lot of you are actually working with stores right now. If you're a Shopify partner looking to build your first app, then you're working with stores already, so you know a lot of the problems that that merchants experience. One of the underserved markets in the Shopify App Store right now is actually merchants who don't have sales. Helping merchants get their first sale is a huge market. There's a lot of merchants who will pay $5, $10, $20 a month if you can just help them get there. Now, even before that, there's merchants who know they want to start a business, but they don't have products to sell. Maybe this is a good example of maybe you build an app for drop shipping and solve that problem for them. You can find these merchants anywhere. Go on the Shopify forums, go to some of the Facebook groups. There's a lot of really great Facebook groups where Shopify merchants and partners meet up and chat. If you're in a major hub, chances are there is a Shopify store with a retail location near you, or there's an official or unofficial Shopify meetup. Go there, talk to them, find out what their problems are. We have some ideas too. Talk to us. Shopify partners, if there's merchants that come to you with a custom job over and over again, then that's a good indication that that's a validated idea. For every merchant that has $3,000, $5,000 for some custom development work, there is 100 more who would pay $20 a month, but they don't have the money for the upfront cost. So turn those kind of repeated projects into products and make some recurring revenue that way. It's a great way to do it. Now, once you've come up with an idea, it's time to get your first users. This is a bit of a do or die time, actually. There's some options that are only available when you first launch your app. We have an option to flag an app as sort of, It's done, but it might have some issues. So what happens there is the app has a little yellow bar at the top of the screen. Merchants are a lot easier on these apps. They're not as harsh in their reviews. And that's a good way to kind of scale back your initial users at first and take time to react to their feedback and iterate on that before you grow too big. Now, obviously, one of the main limitations as far as number of users an app will get is price. Launching as a free app is actually a pretty good idea. It won't get you revenue right away, but free apps do naturally get more installs out of the gate. And we strongly encourage experimentation on price. So you're not locked into offering something for free forever. Try free, try different paid models, see what works. But free is a great way to get those first users. Like we talked about earlier, on coming up with an idea, then hanging out with merchants is a great opportunity to get users as well. Tell them about your product. Maybe they have a similar issue to the one that your product solves. Listen to that, maybe take that feedback into the app and expand the scope or change the scope to fit what those merchants need. Now, like any SaaS business, there's also as many ways to get your first users as there are marketing techniques. Obviously, you can advertise on Google, you can advertise on Facebook. Pay-per-click is a great opportunity as well. Obviously, that requires a little bit of a budget, but if you've been on the internet for any length of time, you've got Google credits somewhere, Facebook credits. This is a great opportunity to use those to experiment with some keywords, experiment with some audiences in Facebook, see how you can target Shopify users that way. Now, obviously, we don't want you guys to build incredible apps and then leave you out in the cold. We want to help too. New and noteworthy is one of the ways that we do that. It's a section in the App Store that highlights kind of the best new apps. So if you build something really great, once you get kind of those first few users, then we keep our eye on that. We look for kind of the best apps, and we highlight them there. It gets a lot of traffic, and it really helps out as well. Now, finally, there is the hustle, Harley's favorite term. Now, hustling with partners is something that we see a lot, and we see a lot of success there as well. There's a ton of partners in this room who are looking for value add for their merchants that they work with. Talk to partners. You're in a room with a lot of them right now. This is a great opportunity to tell them about what you're working on, what you've built. Maybe they want that to be the default solution for X for all the customers that they work with. And that's a great way to get some installs as well. Now I just want to bring Todd back over on stage here to talk a little bit about the merchant experience and how that affects things.
All right. No, not shake my hand. All right, there we go. Hey guys, my name is Todd. I work as the merchant experience lead on the apps team. I started my career at Shopify about 3 years ago, actually in our frontline support team. I moved on to our escalated support team for a little while, learning about the back end of Shopify, and then was welcomed on to the apps team about a year ago to help improve how merchants experience apps on the App Store. So I'm going to be talking today about a couple of the required elements on how to be successful in the App Store, and then I'm going to talk about a pretty exciting new initiative at the end of the talk. But before I get there, I'm going to talk about what I feel is the number one most important aspect to being successful on the Shopify App Store, and that is the quality of support that you offer to your merchants. So I know a lot of you might not be thinking about this right now. You might be focused on the tech stack. There's been a lot of great talks about that. Of course, the features that you're going to offer. And while these are also extremely crucial to your success, there's no apps that are going to be able to grow and survive in the Shopify App Store if you don't have some sort of approach to offering support to your merchants. This is due in large part to the expectations that they have when dealing with Shopify. We have a really high bar with our quality of support. And when merchants are asked why they chose Shopify, the number one reason over the years has been the quality of support that we offer to them. They're in a pretty vulnerable position. A lot of them are relying on Shopify to be successful, and you'll find that they'll also be relying on you. Now, we've learned a lot over the years on what's required rather to run a successful support operation. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips that you can help implement either when you're getting started, if you haven't launched yet, or if you already have an app. If I had to boil it all down to just a two-word mantra, the mantra would be that metrics matter. There's two aspects of this phrase that I'm going to quickly explore. One of them is just that you need to be measuring what's going on in your support organization. If you don't have that, you don't have any baselines, you're not going to know how to improve or even how you're doing. Also, there's a subtler point, which is depending on what you choose to measure with your support organization, it's going to subtly affect what you focus on, and that's going to affect the quality of support that you deliver. And I've had this discussion with a couple of developers over the years, but I figured this was a good opportunity to sort of share some of what we've learned with everybody. Part of our experience is that we've used Zendesk since day one. There's a lot of great tools out there that'll be able to do some of the things I'm going to talk about. Zendesk has worked well for us. It has all the sort of metrics built in, and it has a really robust API that we've been able to use to customize a lot of things, test out a lot of ideas. But even out of the box, it can help with delivering the 3 main types of metrics that I want you all to be thinking about with your support organization, either now or when you get started. The first one is you got to be measuring your interaction totals. So this is just, what volume are you getting into support for your app? There's a pretty big tip that we stumbled on just recently with this one. So we had always been measuring our interaction totals based on how many, emails, how many chats we did. We recently changed that into how many merchants did we help in a day. So this has kind of changed the count from being, I did like 5 emails with one person or maybe 1 or whatever, to just like that was 2 merchants. This has really helped us focus on getting a full answer to a merchant as fast as possible to help us increase our efficiency, but it also helps people feel like they got helped really thoroughly right away. So this has been a nice subtle change to how we measure things that has improved how our organization runs. Next important thing is, of course, time to response. This is a huge part of how everyone experiences support. So how long it takes to get an answer on the phone, how long it takes to get an answer to an email. You got to be measuring this to know how you're doing. We've had some issues in the past where we didn't really know how many people weren't able to get a hold of us on the phone, or we just had like our response times being really, really long. And if we weren't measuring this, we might not know that we weren't doing a very good job, or we might not know now that we're able to offer a really high bar. The last one to think about is just some sort of a quality of interaction metric. So there's a lot of these out there. Net Promoter Score is a popular one. We use something called Smiley. So it's just an email survey that goes out asking them how we did, and they can say negative, neutral, or positive. All of these metrics can be looked at in aggregate to see how you're doing as an organization. Again, you can get your baseline, set some goals. They can be broken down into individual contributors if you have more than one person working in your support organization. But they can also be broken down to like day or hour to see how your volume is going. So if you have a small operation going, you can see that you have more traffic on Monday through Wednesday. That's what we see. And you can say, well, I'm going to spend an hour or 2 on those days, spend an hour or 2 on Friday, and I should be able to get to most people within the week. You wouldn't be able to do that if you weren't tracking the data. And if you're growing quite a bit, you're not going to be able to make decisions like staffing if you're not tracking these metrics. So it's extremely important to be measuring this, hopefully from day one. Another big part, on offering support is your docs, forms, and documentation. You definitely want to have some of this as a piece of the puzzle. If you don't have any of this, you are going to be doing a lot more manual work than you'd like to. Docs you want to have built out from day one. This is going to be helpful, honestly, for us when we're learning how to use your app. It also applies to merchants. They're going to find it very helpful. But it's also going to be helpful in the long term to just reduce that load on you guys. Forms and FAQs become really popular for this. You can just build this out as you're starting off, right? You get some questions in, just start building out your FAQs. If you have forms, if you want to go that route, they can be pretty helpful because they're just a long living database of your answers that people can search. And if you get a community going eventually, you can actually have people answering things. We've got a bit of that going now as well. So you want to be looking at least some of these to help mitigate your support. Otherwise, you're going to be probably drowning pretty quickly. All right. So hopefully if you have all this in place, you're going to have a pretty good organization on how to offer support, which again is super crucial to success on the Shopify App Store. There's going to be 2 major benefits that I'm going to mention that you're going to be able to reap if you're offering a high quality support experience to your merchants. The first major benefit is related to reviews. The number one negative reason why people are leaving negative reviews on Shopify is a poor support experience. So if they aren't able to get a hold of you, or it took a long time, that gets people all tight in the collar, and they want to say something, and they're going to go to the reviews, right? On the flip side, if you're offering a positive support experience, it's likely that they're going to offer you a good piece of feedback. Something that I'm going to suggest to all of you is that if you are doing some sort of a quality of interaction metric, so you're sending them out an email and they say, hey, you did a great job, reach out to those people and ask them for a review right away. You can even automate this process, right? So if you're doing this by email, you get the positive feedback back, shoot out the email. You're going to have a funnel pretty quickly of positive reviews coming into your app. Next up is if you're paying proper attention to your merchants, this is going to be, you're going to be by default reaping the second benefit of offering quality support, which is that you're going to be getting a lot of free UX research. So no one here is going to be able to launch an app on day one that is perfectly tuned to a Shopify merchant. You're going to have to iterate things a lot over time. You're going to get a whole bunch of questions of things that you thought were obvious when you built the app. You're going to get a whole lot of feature requests. And if you're not paying attention to this, you're not going to be able to improve things. We've been paying attention the entire time. Support has always been a big part of our equation. There's a really great story that I wanted to share about Toby early on when he was looking after support, aka like manning the forums. He responded to emails. There was a question about a feature in our forms. And they're a little bit upset that we didn't have this particular feature. So he was like, oh, that's clearly a good idea. We should totally have that. And he went ahead and built it overnight, shipped it in the morning, went back to the forums and was like, hey, we've had this the whole time. I can't believe you didn't find it. And pointed them in the right direction. So maybe not the best way to go about it, but the idea here is that if he was paying attention to what people were saying, right? So he was able to iterate on the platform, make improvements. As your team grows, you may need to implement things like tagging to better understand statistically what people are actually asking about, as opposed to things that are just one-off requests. So the thing that I wanted to stress here is that if you do have a growing team, you absolutely want to keep good lines of communication between your support team and your developers so that you can use all of this sweet, sweet data that you're gathering from merchants about how to improve your platform and get that into the hands of your developers. If that communication line breaks down, you are just leaving gold in the water, in my opinion. So with this in mind, hopefully you can see that there's two major benefits of offering a quality support experience. It doesn't just have to be a burden. There's a lot of benefits that can come from it in offering a higher quality experience to your merchants that can lead to positive reviews, and it can also be viewed as the most valuable resource to help you iterate and improve on your app or service. All right, next up, I want to give you some tips on how to list your app in the Shopify App Store. So this is a bunch of banners of some of our most high-performing apps in the App Store. We recently ran a whole bunch of UX research on the App Store. I got to sit in on a bunch of these sessions, watching people navigate through the App Store. And something that stood out really fast is that people judge really harshly based on the look of the banners. So if you don't have a good, well-designed banner, you are likely losing a lot of traffic. There's a couple of tips that our designers have settled on for our apps that I think are pretty solid that you can implement with your app. They are that we always use a single use of color, we have a logo, and we keep our copy to an absolute minimum. So if you take a look at some of the banners up here, you may find that some are maybe more attractive and you might want to click on them more, and some are maybe not as attractive and you might avoid them. I can tell you right now that even with like reviews and other quality factors, some people literally avoid clicking on apps if they just don't find the banner pretty. We ask them why they do that and they're like, it just doesn't look trustworthy, it doesn't look credible. So this is what merchants are saying just by looking at your app. This kind of speaks to a larger point about apps. Design really does matter when it comes to apps. So even if you don't have a designer on your team, I would strongly suggest at least getting a designer in. Maybe you just hire somebody from Fiverr to do your logo or something like that. It can be a pretty big dividend to get traffic to your app. But obviously, if you have a designer on the team, you can build that into your core interface, and this can be incredibly important to have design involvement. It'll always pay dividends. This conference is obviously crawling with designers and design agencies, so it's a good opportunity to reach out and connect with those people. It's an opportunity to have some valuable conversations that can improve the quality of your app. Now, onto the app listing. I've got one main point here. When merchants are looking at listings, number one reason why they were leaving is they just didn't understand what the app did. So I want you guys to be making it as clear as possible what your app does and how it does it. Obviously, spend some time on the value proposition as well. But if they have to spend too much time just kind of like, I guess I'm getting I'm getting sales with it, but how does that actually work? They're really not going to spend the time digging around to try to figure it out. So make that as clear as possible, as early as possible. This is our Zero app that we have, and you can see our first selling point is it exports orders from Shopify to Zero. Make that as clear as possible at the start. It doesn't say something like, help save you time with orders or something like that. It's as clear as possible. This point applies to video, so if you're making a video, keep it pretty short. Focus on functionality, focus on how you guys do your thing, and of course, make some sort of a value proposition as well. All right, so let's say you've enticed somebody to click on the Get button. They've gone ahead and installed the app. There's a couple of points that I wanted to share with you to finish up about how to make this process as frictionless as possible. I still can't believe they let me keep this next slide, but so what I want you to be doing is OAuthing right away. So get the app into their admin directly when they click the Get button. Have them go through your permissions and everything like that. Okay, you're actually taking pictures. This is super embarrassing. All right. just gonna stand over here. Okay, so you want to get into the admin as fast as possible. It is technically possible to have the Get button lead to your sign-up form that you already have, and have people go through that, and then later on get the app into the merchant's admin. But honestly, a lot of people drop off during sign-up. So if you're not getting the app into the admin and they drop off during sign-up, they'll never see you again. So get that app into their admin as fast as possible. Once it's into the admin, you can even grab their username, or sorry, their first and last name, their email address, and you can use that in your sign-up form to make it even smoother to get them signed up on your app. The last thing that can really help with conversion when getting them signed up is the billing API, of course. So, asking somebody to add their credit card is a big drop-off point. If we already have their credit cards on file, so go ahead and use the billing API. It's going to be a single-click option to get them billed, and it's a pretty friendly experience for them. So I do encourage you all to get on that to help with your conversion. All right, so I'm going to pass it back to Blair to help you give a few more strategies on how to grow your hopefully well-designed and well-supported app.
Thanks, Todd. So you've built your initial app, you've got those initial users, you've optimized your experience, your app listing, your customer service, you've scaled your back end, time to take over the world, but how do you dominate? Now, the ways to grow beyond that, a lot of them are the same ways as your first users. So all those techniques that you use to get your first users, they still apply here. Keep doing that, keep doing your pay-per-click advertising, keep talking to merchants, all of that, but there is some new things to consider. Now, as Todd was mentioning a little bit earlier, reviews are incredibly critical. We use them to rank apps. The ranking algorithm on the App Store, there's a lot that goes into it. We take into account installs, reviews. Reviews are particularly heavily weighted, and reviews as they get older, they drop off in importance when it comes to ranking. We look at the ratio of positive to negative reviews. The consistency of reviews, so a lot of reviews in a burst is not as good as reviews over time. It's really important to just be getting feedback constantly. And the reason for that is that SaaS apps change all the time, right? We don't have the luck of being able to look at the code, see when things change, so we have to count on apps changing constantly, and that's why old reviews matter less. We also use them to guide choices that we make around app promotion. One of the big ones there is getting featured in the App Store. That big featured banner up top gets a huge amount of traffic. It's big, it's pretty, it's front and center, and it just gets a lot of traffic. Now, how do you get in there? 5 positive reviews is what we look for there. So that's 5 4 to 5-star reviews, and once you get that, then you'll show up in there, and that's how you are going to keep growing within the App Store. Now, of course, one of the other things that is really important that we've seen have a lot of value is cross-promotion. Like in this case, 2 apps really is better than 1. We have a lot of partners in this room actually who do this really well. Having a free app, for example, you build a small piece of functionality, you offer it for free, you get hundreds or thousands of users, and then you launch a paid app. You have an existing customer base that you can market to. Even if, no matter what your conversion rate is on that, you're going to get some initial users from the users of your first app. And that's a really great way to do it. Now, of course, 2 apps are great, more are better. The other thing to look at here is verticals. For example, there's certain needs of merchants that apply in one vertical that don't in another. If you're a fashion store, you probably want to have some kind of a way for your customers to try on your clothes, whereas if you sell car parts, nobody wants to try on a muffler. So that's not so, I know, I thought that was funny.
That's a good one, yeah.
So that's another option, is focus on one specific product vertical. Another angle there is geographic verticals. Certain countries have very different needs, whether that's shipping or taxes. The needs of a merchant in Mexico are going to be different than the needs for a merchant in Japan or Canada or the US. So building apps that are targeted specifically to one country or region is a great option as well. Now, one thing that we get a lot is we'll have developers build an app and they'll expect to get hundreds or thousands of installs in their first week. Now, that definitely happens. That can be really good, but it can also be really bad. That explosive growth doesn't give you the time to react to feedback. It doesn't give you time to experiment with different things. So slow and steady really can be better in that case. If you add 10, 20 merchants a week, you can have a sizable app, actually really quickly still, but still have that time to react well to changes and how customers are perceiving things and all that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to Todd here real quick to talk about how we keep things fair in the App Store for developers. That's obviously really important for us.
Great. We're doing pretty good on time. All right, so one of the hats that I wear on the apps team is that of the bad cop. So you might actually hear from me in a couple of situations, and I wanted to kind of reach out today to talk a bit about the reasoning behind some of these situations and just sort of be on the same page. So the first one is just related to support quality. So we actually reach out to merchants if they send a query to you from the app listing 3 days after they do so, just asking them if they did get a response and how it was. So if they say that they didn't get a response, we'll just try to connect them up with you. And that might be one situation where you hear from us. If it's something where we see that a lot, we might just reach out to say, what's going on with the sports? How can we help you improve? What's this, where you're at right now? This is really important to us because we found that merchants find it really difficult to differentiate their experience with Shopify and our third-party developers. They just see it all as sort of Shopify. So we want to keep the bar as high as possible across the board because a bad experience with the developer does really reflect poorly on Shopify. The second one is related to unsolicited emails. So this is something where we've had some situations where there's mailing lists that get out and get passed around. And what ends up happening is certain merchants kind of get a lot of unsolicited emails. This is a really bad merchant experience, again, reflecting poorly on Shopify, so we have to get involved in situations like that. In general, stay away from that kind of approach. And in some cases, it's even illegal. So the last thing I wanted to mention is related to fake reviews. So this is something that we actually are always battling against as best as we can. Fake reviews or offering incentives for reviews, these are actually practices that are prohibited by our terms of service. So if we find out that a review was faked or it was offered, there was an incentive offered to leave it, we will definitely be deleting those reviews or deleting all reviews in some cases, which can be a pretty major setback. But all of this is, there's two parts of this. One of them is we want to make sure that the App Store does have trustworthy reviews so merchants can get quality feedback on how apps actually perform. And the other major part is that we really want you guys to have as fair a playing field as possible. So if there's a lot of just fake reviews floating around, things don't matter. So we really are doing our best to try to make sure that reviews are legitimate and that nobody is getting an unfair leg up on anyone else. All right, so last thing I wanted to talk about today is a bit more exciting, and it has to do with something that we're calling App Discovery. This is a project that I'm working on right now. We're going to be launching it into the admin in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be iterating on it throughout the year. This is going to be something like a Netflix homepage for all Shopify merchants in the app section of the admin. So you can see we have the tiered navigation on the left, so they click on the app section, they'll be able to see their installed apps, and they'll be able to see this new Discover page. We're still working out the designs, but the big idea is that we're going to be looking at things like the age of the shop, their total sales, what country they're in, what shop industry they're in, and other various milestones to identify what apps are going to be most useful to them at any given point. It's going to be, I think, a huge win for merchants. There's so much value that's buried in the App Store. We have our sort of front page and ways for people to search, but I think it's still difficult for merchants to really find all of the value that lies in the App Store. And this is going to be a fabulous way to deliver that to them. And obviously, this is going to be a big opportunity for you guys as well. I think there's going to be a lot more apps that are going to be receiving traffic, and not just traffic, but highly qualified traffic. So look forward to this coming out V1 in a couple of weeks and getting it better and better with our data team throughout the year. Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to pass it back to Blair to wrap things up.
Thanks, Todd. We've covered a lot here. We tried to talk quickly. There's a lot of content. We wanted to leave some time afterwards for you guys to talk to us. We put a lot of time and effort into building the best developer experience, not just in e-commerce, but in technology in general. I like to think we do a really good job. We're here to help. We have amazing partners here as well. If it weren't for you guys, we would have an amazing developer experience, an amazing app store with no developers and no apps. So it really is all about you guys at the end of the day. Thanks for coming and listening. Let's go out there and apply some of this. And I think we have time for some questions. Not a lot of time, but I think there's going to be a lot. So if you can't find us now, then find us right after. And we can cover anybody who didn't get their question answered now.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Hi. Hi, Jim Scott here from...
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Where am I looking?
So that last part about the sort of curated, personalized merchant experience was great.
Sure.
How are you deciding what apps to display in that? And do we, as app developers, get any input into kind of telling you what our ideal target is, so you can target those are the right people?
Yeah, so right now it's going to be more of a data science approach. So we're looking at what apps have been installed at different points in people's journey. So people who are in trial generally install apps from certain categories. One thing that we're thinking about doing is offering better categorization. So maybe offer a larger set of categories that you guys can fit yourself into. At that point, we're going to be able to see that apps in this category were installed during these milestones at this point in their journey. Then we can just sort of surface all that batch of apps to people at different points. So it's mainly going to be a data science approach. It's just looking, at the data that we already have. There's not much input that you're going to be able to directly have. But again, I think what is going to be a piece of the puzzle is better categorization, and you'll be able to choose beyond the 9 categories that we have right now. You'll be able to better tell us what you fit into. So you might see that coming out. Probably that would be a few months away from now.
Thank you.
Hi guys, thanks. Regarding the 5 positive reviews, I imagine there's a lot of apps that have garnered at least 5 positive reviews. So there's a process or algorithm that gets on your radar to be displayed, and then do you tell the app developer if they've made it to the big
Yeah, so we actually do that automatically. Do we let them know? I think.
Actually, we don't. Yeah.
We don't,
So right now we basically have a report that I built that just shows us the apps that have recently passed that threshold. There are so many new apps coming into the App Store right now that we are getting enough apps to fill up our featured banner that are just new apps that have reached that threshold. So that's basically what we're looking at right now. It's one chance at the featured slot, and it's usually going to right now to apps that are just hitting that for the first time. The second part of the question, we actually don't let people know right now that they're going to be featured.
That's something that if that's important though to you guys, then we should do that.
Absolutely.
That's easy for us to do. I know some people want to prepare for their featured slot with.
Yeah.
I think it would be for personally.
That's definitely something that we can look into.
Seriously,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Hey. Will we be able to build apps on top of the new scripts?
Is there a scripts API? Not that I'm aware of right now. I think if anything, one thing that I would love to see is allow scripts to be kind of traded back and forth between merchants. I think that's really cool. There would be a lot of potential there. I mean, most of the scripts, I think most of the use cases that we're seeing for the scripts are like similar to the demo yesterday. They're kind of like 6-7 lines of code. They do some fairly simple things. So I think that's kind of more what we're looking for there, but I could see us opening up more later to even more as that feature gets built out.
Hi, I build Shopify sites, and one of the main reasons why I came to United was to speak to the app developers. And as you mentioned, you want to have good relationships with the merchants, but you really need to consider the developer like me, who has to choose from all the different apps in the store and figure out which are the best ones.
Awesome.
And some of the suggestions on the stage here, I can put my hand up for, because I'd like to see, I went through shipping hell with 2 of my clients because I didn't know really which was the best shipping app. And I built sites, and then they said at the very end, well, we need to have these shipping requirements. And I really didn't know which was the best app for that. And one app, a very popular shipping app, did not have documentation that I could see unless you could run it by his developer. And when I had no choice but to sign up for the 7-day free trial, but I had to have my client commit to real-time shipping, so they had to subscribe for a year.
Yeah, right.
And then I found out there was a $500 charge to make a very minor change in the checkout. So I plead with you to have full documentation. Yes, a simple one to show off the app. Do a video, a short video to show off the app, but have a screen capture for developers like me to see what's going on behind the scenes. Because
that's awesome.
That could be a version of a Skype demo that you wouldn't want to do every day. But if you had that for the developer, not so much on the front end, but on your website. So documentation, videos, and a demo of your app.
Awesome.
For example, wish list. It's a $2 app. But the one I got was the one that had a demo. Because I didn't see examples of the $2 wish list I could recommend my client.
Yep.
And when I was going through all these shipping apps, my client was wasting time, I was wasting time, the templates were being modified by the apps, I had to go back in and undo the changes. So
Yep.
you really need to be friends with people that build sites like me. This isn't just a merchant. You want to be friends with me.
Yep.
Nice.
Those are some very good tips.
I
Thank
like
you.
that. That was not a
That's why I
plan.
came here to
Yeah.
talk to your app people.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks.
Mine's more of a suggestion. Would you guys be open over here, Blair?
Sorry, thank you.
Would you guys be open to creating a UI kit for developers?
I think we are very open to it.
Yeah.
In fact, we kind of have a little bit of something underway as part of the channels release. I think that's something that we're experimenting with for the first time, offering something like that with the channels SDK, sales channels SDK. So if that goes well, I think that's something that we would love to bring to the developer audience at large for
Yeah.
use everywhere.
That's probably coming soon. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. And then the second one is, would you guys be open to creating an iOS app for partners?
Interesting, like a partner's dashboard app, sort of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that's been talked about quite a bit. It's come up a number of times over the years. To my knowledge, there's no active work going on, but it's something that we're definitely looking at, revisiting all the time. And if it's important to you guys, then please let us know, and we will keep looking at that.
There is a project that was started somewhat recently just to improve the partner dashboard as it is right now. So you'll probably be seeing something like that rolled out pretty shortly as well.
There you go.
So we got time for one last question, it looks like.
Do we have? Perfect. He's got. Sorry, guys. Sorry, too many questions. Hey.
Are there any plans to reply to reviews? Because often bad reviews are communication on expectation issue as opposed to your app is broken, I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is something that has come up a bunch of times. I think it's actually a discussion that's sort of ongoing on the team, what the best approach to that is. I think what we don't want to have happen is have reviews turn into a conversation with back and forth. I think that's actually sort of kind of a bad experience for everybody. We can see that turning into sort of argumentative discussion. So that's something that we want to stay away from. I think we're really looking for the best way to handle this right now because we know it's important to you guys. We hear about it all the time.
Yeah.
I would love to have a solution that made sense for both merchants and developers and ultimately us, because at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones dealing with kind of those disputes going on.
Yeah.
So I think we're constantly thinking about it.
From my perspective, being in support for a long time, we always got feedback from our merchants about, we did a great job, we did a bad job. It always hurts, to get a piece of negative feedback, and it hurts even more for you guys because it can affect your business. What I am suggesting most of the time in situations where there is a negative review is that you actually reach out to that merchant and try to work things out with him directly. This is a big benefit for a bunch of reasons, in my opinion. First of all, if they had a bad experience, this is the chance for you to reach out and improve their experience in some way. They do have the ability to change their review from either negative to positive or just delete it entirely. So I would suggest that in any case where you get a negative review, you actually reach out to that merchant as fast as you can. You're not always going to be able to turn it around, but hopefully you'll get some more insight on where they're coming from, fix their problem, and that's really what I would like to see happen in a lot of those situations.
Perfect, thanks Todd. So that's all the time we have for questions here. Please come find us after. We have our entire team here actually, so if you come find us, we'll either talk to you, or if there's a lot of people, then we'll point you to somebody else on our team and we'll get your questions answered. Apps@shopify.com is also the best way to get in touch with us after the show. Thanks everybody.
Hey, thanks.